And in almost all the questions are coming from these three segments. So in India, basically, there was a failure of trickle-down theory, content clarity. So contemporary application is what that differentiates a 90-mark answer from a 110-mark answer, where you will increase economic growth without compromising on labor productivity. At the same time, spend money on capital expenditure, that is infrastructure. At the same time, focus on inclusive growth. All the flowcharts, all the graphs, like the data sheet, have to be prepared beforehand. So trust the process means trust the process with confidence, only the process. Okay, so you have to trust the process, keep practicing. Okay, and discipline is the key.
The UPSC exam doesn't defeat you with difficulty. It defeats you with confusion, lack of clarity, lack of direction, and preparation that feels scattered. At Vision IAS Delhi, we rebuild your UPSC journey with structure, strategy, and support that doesn't waver. Get complete coverage of GSC, SAT, and essays step by step, PT 365 and Mains 365, so current affairs stop feeling like chaos. Personal mentorship, not just advice, but actual strategy guidance. Test feedback loops, because growth begins where guesswork ends. Toppers didn't just prepare, they built the right foundation. Now it's your turn. This isn't just a course, it's where clarity, consistency, and confidence begin.
Good evening. My name is Ram Sudhir, right? And today, actually, what we will try to do is we'll decode main syllabus. In fact, how do we prepare, what has to be done, so that we'll be able to score well in GS3. And specifically, the focus would be on the economics portion of the GS3. Is that okay? So that would be the focus as far as the discussion is concerned. Rather than explaining the questions, so we'll see a few questions also, and the changing trends, what can be asked, what is already asked. Okay, but more focus would be our preparation. And if you are able to concentrate for 2.5 hours, probably you'll get a hold on exactly what has to be done to increase numbers in GS3, especially economy. Okay, so how many of you have written prelims this year? Okay. How many of you have writing mains? Okay. So, okay. So, I think you have some fair idea with respect to the scores in GS3. How are the scores in GS3? Are they good, bad, what? What is the situation of GS3? So when we look at GS3, the first problem in general studies 3 GS3, especially what we observe is even the best of the best students are getting low scores in GS3. This is the observation. Of course, so when everybody is getting low score, now the question comes up that UPSC itself is not giving us marks. So shall we leave that area, rather not concentrate on this area, because anyhow scores are not coming. This is one thought which students have. But one more problem is, suppose if you land up at a number like 67 or 70, okay, in 1 or 2 GS papers, where 70 and 85 in 2 papers, it becomes very difficult to pull scores subsequently in other papers. That means that's a huge difference. Suppose somebody has got 88 here, let's say, and if you're able to get 105, or on an average everybody is getting 65, 70, and if you are able to get 95, that's a huge difference of 15 to 20 marks. So that has to be kept in mind. So you can't neglect this paper completely. If you neglect, you might land up with a score of 70, 75, 80. Okay, and that becomes a big trouble for getting a decent score as far as my mains is concerned. So this you have to keep in mind. So without wasting much time on GS3, can we prepare well for this paper? This is what is important. So generally, optional is important, obviously, because you need to get very good scores. Ethics, optional, essay. This is called as the trio, which will push you to the service, right? So, but at the same time, if GS3 is neglected, if I land up with very low score, that's going to pull my score back. So this is something which we have to understand. And most importantly, what is happening nowadays is the best of the best students, and this is the scorecard of the best student, in fact, but the score is here 88. And there are other students also who have just got something around 65, 70, etc. So the first thing what we have to understand is how are the questions asked in the exam. So we'll try to decode. So one, the dynamic and analytical nature of the paper. So when I say dynamic and analytical nature of the paper, they are primarily asking the analytical part or the application part. So that is something which you have to understand here. So for example, if you see here, they're not going to ask you what is GDP, but there was a question asked like, for example, what is potential GDP? What are the determinants of potential GDP? This was the question that was already asked in the exam. Okay, so that was, why was that potential GDP question asked? Anybody who has seen the previous paper? Previous papers, have checked the previous papers, have seen this question, what is potential GDP? And what are the determinants of potential GDP? Those who have not read the economic survey that year have not attempted that question. So that is basically what we should understand is, though we have not read what is potential GDP, a decent answer can be written without studying what is potential GDP. That is something very important. It's not that every question I would have read it earlier. But at the same time, though I have not read it, I don't know about potential GDP completely. Can I write a decent answer in the exam hall? That's what is very important. So for that, what has to be done, that is what would be our approach. So here, this is just to give you a whole so there were questions on challenges, issues with respect to public distribution system. Okay, there was questions on food processing. We'll see the questions. And rather they've not asked what is GDP, etc. Nobody is going to ask us what is financial inclusion. But the question was something like, do you think market economies need to become inclusive? And what is the role of financial inclusion in enhancing economic growth? So rather than asking the pure definition part, you have to be able to link the dots. That means I should be able to link the static portion to the current. That is what is going to help me. So how are we going to link it? That is what would be our approach here. That's what we will try to observe. Okay. So obviously one important observation here is, there's no point in reading every chapter in the textbook. So that means for mains, basically, suppose you pick up Ramesh Singh or some other textbook. So you start from chapter 1, you start reading monetary policy, fiscal policy. Okay, so the way you do it for prelims. Will that approach be okay for mains? Definitely not. So for mains, approach should be purely exam oriented. Where are the questions coming from? That is what I mean by prioritizing high yielding topics. That means most of the questions are coming from which areas. In fact, there are only 3 main segments, which when we divide the economic syllabus, and almost all the questions are coming from these 3 segments, number 1. Number 2, when we write introduction, there are different ways of writing introductions. For example, one introduction style can be something like a data-based introduction. So data-based introduction, what I mean by data-based introduction is, suppose there is any question on economic growth, probably I should be knowing that what is the RBI's target for the next year, 25-26, what is the growth target of RBI? That should be very clear. What is the growth target of RBI? Just like that, how much is the growth target RBI is talking about? 1 week back, repo rates have been reduced by RBI, right? From 6 to 5.5. CRR also has been reduced by 100 basis points. And RBI was expecting a growth of around 6.5% for the next year. Okay, so World Bank has reduced the growth target for India. Now you're saying 6.3. So these are some numbers which are very common. That means there are many questions on economic growth. That means whatever RBI is saying or whatever World Bank is saying, I should have some hold on data. In fact, we have to prepare a separate data sheet with respect to these three core areas. My data sheet should be ready. So suppose somebody is saying India is a bright spot as far as economic growth is concerned. This was what IMF was saying 1.5 years back. Okay, so that means any introduction when I'm writing on growth. So one is a data-based introduction, which is a safe introduction for a 10 marker, so that I'll not waste the space. At the same time, I'll be able to link it to the current affair. Okay, and not even defining what is economic growth. So that is the reason some data-based introduction. So another way of writing introduction can be from history. So what is this history-based? Connecting the dots to whatever has already happened. What I mean by connecting the dots, for example, there was this question, do you think capitalism needs to become inclusive? Question mark. And what is the role of financial inclusion in enhancing economic growth of the country? This was the question. This was a 10 marker. Now, when I look into this question, if I connect the dots to history, the need for the capital market economies to become inclusive in India has arrived especially after 1991. Okay, so that means the need for capital or market economies to become inclusive. Why? Because we were able to increase our economic growth, we were able to cross Hindu rate of growth, etc. after 1991 due to LPG reforms. And at the same time, inequalities also started increasing. So the need for market economies to become inclusive has arisen after 1991 economic reforms. So that is my linking pin, or I can call it as writing a definition from history. So connecting the dots to the history. For any episode that is there, there can be something that can be linked to the history. For example, if there was this question, foreign investment is a critical factor for growth, but over dependence on foreign investment can become even more critical. Okay, so this was a question. This was a 10 marker, let's say. Or do you agree that the growth process in India can be called as jobless growth? Do you agree? Substantiate your answer. If you have seen the previous questions, so do you agree that the growth process in India can be termed as jobless growth? Do you agree? Now, how do I say that there is jobless growth in India? How do I say there's jobless growth in India? How do you arrive at this? How do you substantiate your point saying that there is jobless growth in India? Employment rate is okay. So for jobless growth in economics, is there any variable which I can mention to show that there is jobless growth? Growth of service sector, okay. So one is growth of service sector. So what he says is contribution of service sector to GDP is increasing. Let's say service sector is contributing to 55%, but it is just contributing to 35% of my employment. So there is jobless growth, okay. Or there is this term called employment elasticity. That is the word. Maybe you've learned it in unemployment chapter. So falling employment elasticities will indicate that there is jobless growth. So instead of writing just English, I have to pick up some terms and terminologies which will define the whole line of jobless growth. So I have to mention some data. For example, 1970s to 80, what is the employment elasticity? And currently, what is the employment elasticity? Employment elasticity basically measures the proportionate change in employment to proportionate change in GDP. Okay, that means jobless growth is what? GDP is increasing in the denominator, but jobs are not getting created. Got the point? So that means anything that is there, you have to focus on some keywords. Maybe there will be some 70 to 80 keywords which I will use in my answers. I hope you're able to understand. Okay, so that is something which you have to concentrate on. Fine. So here I mentioned prioritizing high-yielding areas, integrating current affairs from economic survey and budget. Very, very important. If you observe topper sheets also, you've done a solid research. Now I'll come up with stating a particular introduction where I will apply it to current affairs. For example, if I'm writing an introduction on infrastructure and growth, okay. So suppose the economic survey says for every 1 rupee spent on infrastructure is adding to 2.5 rupees to my GDP or the economy. Now, this is one way of writing the introductions, where I will use some data from economic survey and budget. That I will see how we do it. Okay, so that is, I think till there things are okay. Of course, this slide is just to tell you the importance of economics in the GS3, the economic development portion. So around you will have around 125 marks, 120. It ranges from 115 to 125. So almost like 40 to 50% of the paper is all about economics. But definitely, if I want 110, I have to do well in other subjects as well. Otherwise, we are not going to get that 105 plus. Okay, so one is focusing on the economic areas, which is almost like the 50% of the paper. At the same time, I have to do justice to all other subjects also if 105 has to be achieved. So this is what this template is. This template is basically telling you the weightage, etc. And what is the weightage of economics in GS3? Economics means economics plus agriculture put together. It's around 40 to 50%. Therefore, you cannot neglect. There is some amount of effort which has to be pushed in. Is that clear till there, right? Now, one more important aspect. So, exactly what has to be done? So, first thing is getting clarity on content. This is the most important aspect. When I say getting clarity on content, there are whenever we read something, we come across different words. For example, let's say there's this word called inclusive growth. So for prelims, we would have read what is inclusive growth. Okay, so what is inclusive growth? Anybody? Growth for everyone? Okay, that's all? That's what is inclusive growth? Growth of every sector. Okay. That's all. That is what is inclusive growth. Growth of every sector. Growth of macro. See, which 5-year plan was talking about inclusive growth specifically? Which 5-year plan was talking about economic growth specifically? Of course, inclusive growth as a concept was there from the beginning. But specifically, one 5-year plan, that is the 11th 5-year plan, was talking about inclusive growth. So, inclusive growth concept basically talks about including everybody in my growth process. In simple words, I'm including everybody in my growth process. So, in India, basically, there was a failure of trickle-down theory. Trickle-down, that means my GDP is increasing at the top, but the benefits of the growth were not percolating down to the lower sections of the population. So, this is called as failure of trickle-down theory. Okay, so if I am able to include it, that means though India becomes a $5 trillion economy tomorrow, if there is a trouble with respect to education or unemployment problem, sanitation, access to healthcare, are you able to get this? So that this indicates that there is a problem with respect to inclusive growth. But inclusive growth is not just about this definition. Now the problem here is when we understand inclusive growth, including everybody in the growth process, or we understand that yes, India has failed to achieve inclusive growth, that will definitely not help you to write good answers. You have to think beyond the definition. So that means it's not just sufficient that you just read the definition. Okay, I understood what is inclusive growth. That's not sufficient. You have to think beyond the definition, or you have to break down the keyword. And once you have hit the keyword, you have to understand the different dimensions of inclusive growth. Okay, when I understand the different dimensions of inclusive growth, then I will check what did the government do in terms of achieving inclusive growth. Are you able to get this? That is where the question comes. For example, if I say, if there is a question on inclusive growth, I should be knowing the different elements of inclusive growth. Then only I'll be able to write an answer with respect to inclusive growth. If you don't know the different elements of inclusive growth, then you can't write a decent answer with respect to inclusive growth. So that is the reason the answers would become more vague, and that will end you up with getting average marks. So the more answer should become more specific. Though the question is vague, the answer should be more specific, number one. Number two, the answer should be you should be able to link it to current affairs. Link it to current affairs, that is the second thing. Third important aspect, are there any government programs and schemes which are directly linked to this word called inclusive growth? I'm taking inclusive growth as a word. Here, one key word. For mains, my research is on this word called inclusive growth. Remember this. So how do I do that research is very important. So how do I do that research? First thing what I should be doing, what were the previous questions asked with respect to this word called inclusive growth? That's the first thing. Okay, this word called inclusive growth has been linked to which all areas in the exam. For example, let's say there was this question, do you think market economies need to become inclusive? This was the question. Market economies need to become inclusive. Do you agree that market economies need to become inclusive? So this was one question that was already asked. Okay, so, or if tomorrow if there is a question, what is the role of financial inclusion in enhancing inclusive growth? That means financial inclusion is also one aspect of inclusive growth. Okay, so that is something which is very important. Okay, so here if we see, okay, so how do I build the concept? How do I build the words basically? So here if you see, this is, one second. So understanding the word. Suppose there is this word called economic growth. How do we define economic growth? In India, economic growth is defined using the concept of GDP. And we define it as the money value of all final goods and services produced within the domestic territory of India in one financial year. That will not help us anyhow to write a very good answer, obviously, when it comes to mains. What are the areas that were already asked with respect to economic growth is what I will check. For example, 2017, there was a question. Savings is an important factor for growth. What are the other things other than savings that will affect economic growth? This was the question. Okay. Now, a simple question I'll ask you. What about household savings rate? Have they increased or decreased in the last few years? So, first of all, household savings rate means savings rate as a percentage of what? GDP. Savings rate as a percentage of GDP actually has come down. It has come down to 18%. Savings as a percentage of GDP has come down. Okay, so the question was what? Savings is an important factor for economic growth. What are the other things? Do you agree was the question? And what are the other things other than savings that will affect economic growth? This was already asked. Okay, then there was a question. What is potential GDP? What are the determinants of potential GDP? Already asked. Then they've asked K-shaped and V-shaped recovery with respect to the growth fundamentals. V-shaped and K-shaped recovery. Are you able to get this? Okay, then they've already asked in 2020 the new method of GDP calculation. New method of GDP calculation. They came up with the new method of GDP calculation in 2015. But the question came up around to 2020. So CSO came up with this new GDP calculation in 2015. So these are basically straightforward questions. Straightforward questions explain what changes have been brought in. Okay, then comes what are the links with respect to growth. For example, foreign investment is a critical factor for growth. What are the other things other than foreign investment? Like what will affect growth? Okay, so these are all questions which were already asked. Okay, so when I'm reading the word inclusive growth or growth, what are the things I have to keep in mind? First of all, I should be knowing what are the things that will constitute this word called inclusive growth. Once I've seen the questions, then I'll check what are the elements of inclusive growth. So what are the things that will constitute my inclusive? That means when I'm talking about Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, can I see Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana as part of inclusive growth? Yes. Or when I'm talking about Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana or skill development program, is it part of this concept called inclusive growth? Or when you're reading Vishwakarma or Swachh Bharat, so these are the schemes which are there. So can I consider them as part of my inclusive growth? Technological advancements, etc., as well as social security or the pension schemes of the government, will it be considered as part of the inclusive growth? Are you able to get this? So I'll not just read the definition of inclusive growth, rather I will dig deeper based on the questions related to inclusive growth. So then I'll try to understand what are the elements of inclusive growth. Are you able to get this? So once you have understood, that means when I talk about skill development, yes, skill development is an area linked to inclusive growth, or financial inclusion is an area linked to inclusive growth. That means whenever there is a question on inclusive growth, I can talk about these key elements which are affecting the inclusive growth. I'll not just talk about what is inclusive growth. Inclusive growth, including everybody in my growth process. But how do I include everybody in the growth process? Which are the important areas where the government has to focus so that the growth becomes more inclusive? So government has to focus on what? Financial inclusion, social development, social security, skill development programs, technological development, reducing rural-urban divide, creating employment opportunities. These are the areas. So this is something like the theme which will tell you, yes, these are the areas. So once I know what are the elements that are going to affect the inclusive growth, then comes the area, what are the schemes of the government which are linked to this word called inclusive growth? Your research has to go in that direction. So once I've understood this is inclusive growth, these are the elements of inclusive growth, then I will check, yes, housing schemes, okay, or financial inclusion, employment guarantee schemes, Skill India mission, Digital India program, digital public infrastructure, all these things are also part of my inclusive growth. Are you able to get this? This is the second important observation here. Once the definition is clear, okay, then I will, once I've seen the previous questions, then I'll write what is inclusive growth. Okay, what is inclusive growth is there in the slide, nothing to worry. Okay, then comes what are the elements of inclusive growth. So once the elements are clear, then for each element, is there any scheme which the government has launched? I need not explain the scheme, but I should know that, yes, for financial inclusion, this is the scheme. For skill development program, this is the scheme. Okay, Digital India mission. Okay, so that is something which you have to focus on if we want marks. Is that okay? So here if you see Swachh Bharat, income support for the farmers, that is also a part of inclusive growth. Why? Because generally, though the GDP number is increasing, the number of people dependent on agriculture directly is around 46%. Indirectly, it is around 60%. There are problems like disguised unemployment and issues of small and marginal farmers. So income support programs of the government, specifically targeting farmers, will also enhance something called as inclusive growth. That means Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi or Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. All this comes under my ambit of inclusive growth. Is that clear? Okay, so this is just to tell you, when I look into a particular word, when I'm reading a word, I will not just read the basic definition of the word. So basic definition is what? What is inclusive growth? That is there, that we can get it from anywhere. How UN defined inclusive growth. UN definition of inclusive growth, or how do we define inclusive growth? That's a basic standard definition of inclusive growth. But rather than that, we have to focus more on the elements of inclusive growth. So that is what I mean by, first thing is content clarity. So when I say content clarity, let's say there are 60, 70 words in mains which are recurring themes. When I say recurring theme, one recurring theme is about inclusive growth. Second recurring theme is what? Economic growth. Economic growth. Are you able to get this? Okay, so economic growth, then comes jobless growth, then unemployment related areas. There was a question on structural unemployment, etc. Do you think the unemployment problem in India is structural in nature? Okay, so very clear, UPSC is clearly telling you that I will be asking questions from this area. So these are the words where I have to focus and I have to build my content on these words. Is that clear? Now, and you may think that it may take a very long time. It will not take a very long time because you will not have more than 30, 40 repeating words in the exam. Not even 30. Themes are 3, words will be 30, 40 max. Are you able to get this? Okay, so that is the first part. So now what should I do to get some clarity on the content? This is, of course, somebody who has already read, very good. Freshers or just trying to build their content, obviously you have to focus on NCERT, number 1. Number 2, ChatGPT. Use internet as much as possible, like Investopedia, ChatGPT. That's the best source, in fact. Why? Because I can straight away copy paste things and my notes will be ready. Okay, so then standard textbook for mains, I don't believe in a standard textbook. But since some students get confidence because of a standard textbook, I've mentioned a standard textbook. There are vision value addition materials also for mains. So value addition material is some topics which are not there in Ramesh Singh, etc. Everything would be available at one place so that your time will be saved. And what should be the focus? Focus on keyword in the syllabus. Keep the syllabus copy, keep the previous questions. What are the keywords? If there is a keyword, can I write a keyword, define that keyword, and link that keyword to the recent current affair example? For example, if there is a keyword like growth, can I talk about the data point related to? Or can I talk about what IMF has mentioned recently? This is how you have to think. You can't say growth is this. Rather, I have to think growth. What did IMF say or World Bank say about India's growth? What is RBI's target with respect to growth? Is there any specific thing that was mentioned in the economic survey with respect to economic growth? This is how you have to think about that keyword called growth. You will not stop at economic growth definition, okay, definition of GDP. I think it is clear. Is that okay? So this is the source basically. So source can be anything. If you don't want to use the textbook, use the value addition material, use topper sheets, and focus on keywords. First, pick the keywords from the previous year papers. All PYQs. That is over. Once that is over, my 60% preparation is already done. So the keywords of PYQ should be over. Okay, and then comes the syllabus, NCERT, whatever is there, and the syllabus, whatever is mentioned. So sometimes you will find questions directly picked up from the syllabus itself, scope and significance of food processing industry. As it is, the line is picked up. Okay, so therefore there's no trouble. Okay, so this is, I think it is clear. Any doubt here? Anybody has any other? Of course, your coaching notes will also help you. Okay, so that is anyhow there, your own notes or coaching notes. But this is how for a fresher, what has to be done, basically focus on NCERT. Focus on building your concept around keywords. So this is what you have to do. Now, once understanding of the words is over, the most important thing, as I mentioned, is the contemporary application. So contemporary application is what that differentiates a 90-mark answer from a 110-mark answer. Now observe any topper sheet and whose scores were really good. One common thing which you will observe is, you will not find the definition as definition, rather you will find that definition being linked to something that is in news. So when I'm talking about infrastructure, that is linked to PM Gati Shakti. Or you're talking about national infrastructure pipeline, or the targets mentioned in the budget related to national infrastructure pipeline, or national monetization pipeline, etc. Are you able to get this? So this is something which you have to understand. So for example, it is the ability to link a concept like investment models to the Gati Shakti, or about discussing food security, not in theory, but in the context of Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. So not just thinking about food security as such, but what is there in news? What is the contemporary area right now when it comes to this word called food security? So that is how you have to prepare the notes also. So when I'm discussing, when you're reading food security, what are the related areas or the contemporary issues in news related to food security? And is food security linked to inclusive growth? Yes, obviously. Are you able to get this? So inclusive growth is a very important theme. So therefore, I will spend time on building my theme like inclusive growth. So anything, any current affair data and any current affair scheme or any current affair news related to food security or infrastructure has to be linked. Is that okay? So this is the first thing. So what has to be done exactly? One is, once my basic concepts and words are clear, okay, then comes focusing on economic survey, budget. So economic survey is like, generally students read economic survey like this question will come in prelims or not, okay, or which synopsis do I read? Okay, so which institute synopsis I read, so that if there is one question in the exam, I will write. That's not the approach for economic survey. For every question we write, you will find some theme from the economic survey. So that is how economic survey has to be used. For example, inclusive growth, when I'm reading inclusive growth, what are the areas in inclusive growth which can be picked up from economic survey? Is that clear? So economic survey, budget, and Niti Aayog report. So these are the main areas. Another important aspect here is the newspaper editorial. Some have this notion like, why should I read newspaper? But my suggestion is, if you are reading newspaper, those who are writing now, Obviously, if there's no time, that's okay. But those who are writing the next year, obviously, newspaper editorials are a very good analytical aspect. You get some analytical points from the newspaper, which will flow in the exam hall. So that is something like newspaper editorial are a very good source for getting good marks. Okay, so newspaper editorial, there's one newspaper editorial, like Indian Express, explained column. That should be sufficient. And integrate notes. So when I make notes on agriculture, the latest schemes, data on production, challenges mentioned in the news that week, everything should be updated immediately. That is the reason making notes on laptop is always better rather than making notes in physical format. So you may say, sir, writing practice and all, but that's okay. Writing practice, will do it separately. What I believe is, when I'm making notes, why should I keep on writing? And it's very difficult also. I can open different tabs, and when I'm talking about agriculture notes, I will be able to pull out material from, let's say, Vision magazine. I'll be able to pull out material from ChatGPT. I'll able to pull out material from the Ministry of Agriculture. Okay, so, and then anything in news, I will add it there itself. I can add on also. So that is the reason it is always better I prepare the notes on laptop or maybe a gadget rather than writing a physical notes. So if you're writing a physical notes, you have to write it on white paper so that you can keep on adding. And that becomes more tiresome because you can't copy paste things. Okay, that's up to you. So I'm not saying that no, sir, we have the habit of writing. That's okay. But what I'm trying to say, the easy method, because we have to save time. So that is a better way. I hope it is clear. Okay, so linking to contemporary things is something like this. Okay, or basically looking at the current affairs when you're reading related to inclusive growth. Okay, so this I've mentioned already. So this is how you link things. Okay, so basically these things are available in the internet. For example, when I read about inclusive growth, this data is available. So for that, why should I write? Got the point right. I'll copy paste things. Then I'll open topper sheets on the questions on inclusive growth. What did they write? Okay, so that is another area which I will check immediately. And then I'll copy paste that. Are you able to get this? Okay, so, and then the schemes in news which I can use. That is how it is. I hope it is clear. So the first pillar which I mentioned is getting a hold on concepts and what has to be done with respect to concepts. Second is, how do I link it to current affairs and extend the topic? Third important area is, now it is about presentation. Are you able to get this? Okay, so the third important area is presentation. How do I do it? What are the different areas which I have to focus for economics? I can tell you that there are 3 clusters put together, and you will have around 10 to 12 themes only from where all the GS economy questions will come. Why? Because it is clearly mentioned that economic development. So there is very clear indication. Till now, very few questions were asked on monetary policy. If you have checked monetary policy related questions, very few questions on monetary policy. Did they ask any question on financial market? No, there was no question on financial market, stock markets, nothing in mains. Because mains is all about economic development and developmental issues. Anything related to development becomes important for the exam. Very clearly mentioned. So there's no point in wasting time and energy. The last things I will read would be monetary policy. Are you able to get this? Okay, so then where should I focus if I really want good scores? So the first cluster, which from where minimum 2 to 3 questions might appear every year, is this growth and macroeconomic fundamentals. This is the most important theme. Most important theme. And if you say, sir, what if it comes from somewhere else? It will not come from somewhere else. Go check the question papers. There will be questions only from these 3 themes. Maybe some current affair question, one vague question might come. That's okay. So when I'm writing 9 questions, 8 are known to me. 9th one is a partial thing. It's okay. It's all about how much time am I spending and how accurately am I writing those 8 questions. That is what is important. Okay, so the first important theme, growth and macroeconomic fundamentals, very important. This is about mobilization of resources. For example, if I asked you this question, savings is an important factor for growth. What are the other things other than savings which will affect growth? That is economic growth as well as mobilization of resources. Actually, that question is from mobilization of resources. What are the different ways of mobilizing resources for the government? What are the different ways of mobilizing resources for the private? So savings is also one of the important factor or a mobilization of resource, which leads to capital formation. Similarly, taxes for the government, that means tax to GDP ratios of the government. That is another area of mobilizing resources for the government. Okay, for the private, IPO, stock market is one way of mobilizing resources. Are you able to get this? So that question is basically asked in this area of economic growth and mobilization of resources. Okay, so it deals with big picture of the economy, broader picture. We'll see the question, then you'll understand. Questions here are analytical and often linked to social justice. They will test your fundamental understanding of India's economic story. How India's economic story is changing. That is where the question will be asked. And every year, 2 to 3 questions will come. So here, what are the areas I've mentioned? Inclusive growth, economic growth, mobilization of resources, employment. These are the areas. All these together, if you link, there is a link between all of them, and that is how the questioning pattern is also. So I'll show you one simple example here. Okay, so this is the theme. For example, the first theme, economic growth. So what were the questions which were already asked? The questions which were already asked, if you look at, okay, so what is the role of savings in leading to capital formation, thereby increasing the economic growth of the country? This was already asked. Okay. Do you think market economies need to become inclusive? What is the role of financial inclusion in increasing economic growth? Already asked. Financial inclusion and economic growth. 2018, there was a 15 marker which was linking labor productivity with economic growth. The question was something like, okay, the growth process of India and the growth process of India in the recent past, okay, was because of increase in labor productivity. Suggest growth models where you will increase economic growth without compromising on labor productivity. This was the question. You can go back and see. That means what? What is the theme of the question? Labor productivity leading to economic growth. So how will labor productivity will lead to economic growth? Anybody? Okay, so if you know, when I say economic growth is dependent on rate of investment and capital output ratio. Okay, this is Herod-Dahmer. Of course, they will not ask Herod-Dahmer. So that means economic growth of a country, our first 5-year plan was basically talking about this model, Herod-Dahmer. So first 5-year plan, what was the focus? We have to increase our economic growth. That is the reason every 5-year plan, you will find this is the expected growth, this is the actual growth. That means what? One of the long-term objective of 5-year plan was economic growth. This is what is the changing trend. Then slowly we said, another important objective of 5-year plan, we have to focus on inclusive growth. That is also another theme of long-term objective of 5-year plan. Inclusive growth is a long-term objective. Now here, what is this? Rate of investment. What is investment according to economists? Investment is something that leads to capital formation. What is capital formation? Accumulation of capital goods in a country. So for that, first 5-year plan was talking about investment, savings leading to investment. Savings will get converted into investment, and then you're talking about capital output ratio. This ratio will talk about efficiency of investment. So savings is an important factor for growth. What are the other things other than savings, for example? What are the other things other than savings that can affect my economic growth? Another factor that can affect economic growth is capital output ratio. That means lower is my capital output ratio, higher would be my economic growth. Simple logic. Similarly, FDI and FI investments, these are not our savings, it's coming from outside. Similarly, ECB, external commercial borrowing, this is not our savings. Similarly, the capital arrangement capacity of the company, that depends on the performance of stock market, that will also affect the GDP growth. Then obviously when we are stuck in the exam condition, you have to think about the syllabus in the syllabus. So each syllabus topic can be a point for that question. For example, in our syllabus, do we have infrastructure? Yes. Will infrastructure affect economic growth? Yes. Then comes government policy. Will government policy affect economic growth? So monetary policy and fiscal policy, right? Monetary stimulus, fiscal stimulus, both will affect economic growth. Are you able to get this? So we're talking about syllabus only. Then labor productivity. So more is the labor productivity. That means what? Earlier 100 labor hours, they were producing 1000 units. Now with 50 labor hours, they are able to produce same 1000 units. So this is what is labor productivity in manufacturing, in simple words. Okay, so if my labor is becoming more productive, it will reduce this capital output ratio. What is capital output ratio? The amount of capital required for producing a single unit of output. So I should know some words. Everybody says, no, economics mains is all about English. Not like that. If we write only English, if I know the concept, I'll have 3-4 more points I can write in the exam. That is what is the difference between somebody who's just writing English and somebody who knows really what are the factors that are affecting my growth. That is the first thing. So if the labor productivity is good, means I will need less capital to produce 1 unit of output. If I need less capital to produce 1 unit of output, this will increase my economic growth. So labor productivity is another factor that will affect. Then supply chain and infrastructure, backward forward integrations. Logistics efficiency and supply chains will also reduce my capital output ratio. Then R&D spending of the government, R&D spending, research and development, better is your R&D. India spends 1.25% of GDP, less than 2% of GDP. Okay, so very less. So R&D spending, if you're not doing, then you can't expect low capital output ratios. So R&D as a factor, will it affect growth? Yes. So think of syllabus when you're stuck in the exam condition. Infrastructure is my syllabus topic. Inflation is a syllabus topic. Monetary and fiscal policy is a syllabus topic. Are you able to get this? Labor productivity is a previous question. Capital output ratio, FDI and FPI, ECBs from outside. Are you able to get this? So this is what? This is something like, this will help me to write a decent answer, not a great answer, very decent answer. And then what should I fill in those themes becomes important. I hope you're able to get this. So now that is how, that means growth as a factor, I have to collect data. I'll also have to have my side headings related to growth. I'll also think of what are the new things which government has done in terms of increasing growth. What were the RBI policies in the recent past in terms of increasing growth? So all these are questions that were already asked. For example, they've asked infrastructure, role of infrastructure in increasing economic growth, already asked. Define potential GDP, determinants of potential GDP, already asked. Foreign investment is a critical factor for growth. Over dependence on foreign investment can affect growth, already asked. Are you able to get this? Low inflation or decent inflation, low inflation and decent economic growth indicate that economy is in good shape. This was a question in 2019. Of course, verbatim, I'm not able to tell you the exact word, but the question was, in a country, if the inflation is under control and it has a decent growth, does it indicate that the economy is in good shape? Do you agree? This was the question. That means what? That question was linking inflation and growth. If they are under control, that means you have a decent growth and low inflation, does it indicate that the economy is in good shape? Do you agree? This was the question. Are you able to get this? V-shape and K-shape recovery. 2017, I think, 17-16. This was the question. That is again with respect to my growth. And then role of manufacturing sector and growth. That was before last year mains question. So this is something like when I take growth, That is what I said. So here, this area, so the concept should be clear. If I don't know what is capital output ratio, I don't know what is Harrod-Domer. That means savings will have an impact on growth, investment will have an impact on growth, capital output ratios will have an impact on growth. Then I should know what is the savings ratio, savings to GDP ratio in India currently. Then last 5-6 years, savings to GDP ratio has increased or decreased so that I can substantiate my answer. Like I just can't write just English. Are you able to get this? Okay, so clear? So this is what I mean by growth and macroeconomic fundamentals, a very important area which talks about inclusive growth, economic growth, okay, mobilization of resources, and employment related areas. Is that clear? Okay. That is the first cluster. Everybody has understood the first cluster? Again, we'll come back. Any doubts you have, you can ask me. What has to be done also, we will see. So that is the first cluster which talks about economic growth, macroeconomic fundamentals, which include inclusive growth, mobilization of resources. Is that okay? And developmental issues like unemployment. That's the theme. I will collect data only with respect to that theme. I will collect government related schemes only related to that theme. But when I'm doing that, I should keep in mind what? I should keep in mind what were the questions which were already asked. That's very important. I should know how did we come to this box diagram? How did we do it? How to use PYQ. This is what. Okay. Then collect data related to probable areas. How do I know probable areas? When I see papers, I'll know that this is a probable area. Then my data will also be focused on that area only, and schemes also will be collected from this area only. It's not that I'll read everything and go. That's not possible. We have to read optional, we have to read ethics. I think you're getting my point right. So this is something, PYQs and what can be asked. I'll come to what can be asked. Once what is asked is clear, then we will think of what can be asked. Sometimes same things will be asked again and again. Okay, so I hope it is clear. Okay, so let's go to the second cluster. Very important cluster which most of the students neglect. They'll feel like irrigation, I will not read. Cropping pattern, I will not read. Or they'll think I'll read in geography. And when they're reading geography, that point of time, they'll say I'll read in economy. But ultimately, they'll not read cropping pattern. But what you should understand is, agriculture is a developmental area where every year, there will be minimum 2 questions. Minimum. Okay, so that means you have to concentrate on this area, which is a very important area. Very important area. What are the things? Agriculture means what? Extensions of agriculture. So one is agriculture marketing. Okay. What were the questions asked on agriculture marketing? Cropping pattern, last year also there was a question. Okay. And then PDS, public distribution system. They have asked what are the challenges of public distribution system. Already asked. So rather than just writing what are the challenges of public distribution system, I should be able to talk about Vadva committee recommendations. I should be able to talk about Shanta Kumar committee recommendations on FCI. That will make my answer more specific. Are you able to get this? Rather than saying problems of PDS, everybody will write leakages, first problem. Second problem, problems in calculation of MSP. Problems with FCI. Distribution problems. For every 5 rupees they are spending, only 1 rupee is reaching because of leakages. Now, these are some, see, basically, when I ask problems of PDS, everybody knows that, yes, these are the problems. But what did government do in the recent past? Which state government has done what? So that is something which I have to focus on. So food security, buffer stock was asked last year. Okay. Before last year, challenges of PDS was asked. Okay. Before last year, scope and significance of food processing was asked. I'll show you the questions also. Okay, so what it means, this is without a doubt the single most important cluster. It holds the highest weightage and is directly linked to daily headlines about farmer protests, inflation and rural distress, developmental issue, farmers problem. Therefore, there will be a question. If you master this cluster, you are on your way to 110 plus. Weightage very heavy. Actually, this is the most neglected area. When you read economics also, for prelims also, many a times students will say, it's an English-based topic. But this is the most important area where questions keep coming. This is the second cluster. I think the cluster is clear. Those who are writing mains, 3 clusters, if we have 3 to 4 clusters are there, if I am able to collect notes and data with respect to that, that can be done very fast, those who are writing this year also. Okay, so is this clear? So now moving forward, so if you see how the questioning pattern is, just to give you a hold of how are they asking. So this was asked already. So this was asked in 2019. The question was what are the policies taken by the government in the recent past to handle the problems in food processing? This was a 15 marker. Okay, so this cannot be bluffed in the exam. I should know the policies of government. For example, food processing was part of priority sector lending targets. Okay, so you should be knowing that. Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana. How is it going to help in infrastructure building, which will support the food processing sector? Are you able to get this? So, or mega food park program brought in. So I need to know, this is a specific area where, and what did the government do in the budget with respect to food processing? Is that clear? Okay, so this was the question. Okay, so if we look at few more questions. Now see here, that was already asked. What was the question asked? The question was something like, what did the government do to handle the challenges of food processing? That was asked. Then another question that was asked subsequent here, what are the challenges and opportunities of food processing sector? How can income of farmers be substantially increased? So that means through food processing, how can income of farmers be substantially increased? Are you able to get this? Okay, so similar theme, challenges they are asking. What are the challenges of food processing? Many challenges are there, many problems are there. Problem is most of the food processing sectors are in unorganized sector. They don't have economies of scale, branding issues are there, credit is not there. Like that you have a lot of problems and challenges. Okay, so then they've asked what are the opportunities in the processing sector and how income. So now in the 2022 again you observe, if you would have read that properly, then what elaborate on the scope and significance of food processing industry. This is called as a repetition of theme. So when I'm reading the first theme itself about the challenges, I will also read about importance of food processing and what measures the government has already taken. Suppose if I ask you, what is the significance? Can you give me some points on significance? Just for, what is the meaning of significance? Importance. So can you give me some points on significance, anybody? Can you give me some side headings only? I'm not asking for data. Side headings. Significance. For example, like significance of processing industry. Doubling farmers' income. One side heading. So then I'll pull the side heading. How do I pull the side heading? Processing sector will increase the demand for food items. So there's a higher demand for agri products, thereby increasing the income for farmers. Similarly, it will help in increasing agri exports because more processing. If you're able to increase agri exports, then there will be a trickle down impact on farmers' income. I'm telling you just the keywords, trickle down impact, no more exports, trickle down impact on farmers. Then it will also help in handling issues related to food security. So when I define food security is not just about availability of grains, affordability, stability, as well as nutrition. Today that is the definition of food security. There are 4 components: affordability, availability, stability, and nutrition. So nutrition will be handled through fortification. We're talking about vitamin D fortified milk. Are you able to get this? Okay, so vitamin A built rice, all that. We're talking about different types, golden rice. So here basically when we talk about food security, and then is there any side heading related to food inflation? Obviously the other food inflation, why shelf life is going to increase? Stability will increase and therefore it will help. And another important aspect probably can be malnutrition. Okay. Then external sector balance. So first line of thinking is what? First line of thinking is side headings are compulsory. First line of thinking is, now you may say, sir, I'll write sentences and paragraphs. Agreed. Side headings are compulsory. 10 marker, do I have 10 points? Then extending the side heading, I will write a scheme or a data point. This will become a habit over a period of time. It becomes difficult. For all the 10 points, I may not be able to write. But if for a 10 pointer, if I'm able to do that, I'm able to write some data or a scheme or an example, then automatically my chances of getting half mark more, 1 mark more than the competitor will increase. This is what significance or importance: doubling farmers' income, agri exports, food security, food inflation, malnutrition, external sector balance. Why? Because I will be able to increase my agri exports. So doubling farmers' income, Ashok Dalwai committee came up with some recommendations. Of course, it's not a regular class, so but Ashok Dalwai said to double farmers' income, we have to double agriculture exports from 30 billion to 60 billion. And then from 60 billion to 100 billion by 2030. That is what Ashok Dalwai committee in 2018 also mentioned. And to increase farmers' income, he also says you have to depend on allied sectors of agriculture rather than crops. And I should focus on value addition. So you can't focus on value addition unless and until I focus on food processing industry. And food processing industry was also mentioned as a sunrise sector by the 12th five-year plan. Sunrise sector. So sunrise sector is that sector which is important for economic growth also as well as development also. Of course, I don't want to discuss answers. Our intention is to just see what exactly has to be done so that scores will improve. Is that okay? Understood. So this is basically to tell you that these are the keywords for significance. This was the question. Now if you see the question, there is a scope and significance of food processing in a 10 marker. Now, so scope and significance is one heading and write 10 pointer. But if I know what is scope, what is the meaning of scope? It is about opportunity. Got the point, right? The literal meaning is, what opportunity do I have? Significance is importance. What opportunity do I have? India is the second largest producer of vegetables and fruits. But still less than 2% or less than 3% of our vegetables are processed. So this is an opportunity still there. Are you able to get this? Okay. Or suppose there is $80 to $100 billion in FDI investment coming into processing industry in the next 4 to 5 years. Okay, so, or next 6 years. What is this? This is an opportunity or a scope related to processing industry. Are you able to get this? So there is a slight difference between scope and significance. Significance is more like importance. Is that okay? But already opportunities was asked the previous year. Already challenges, if there is challenges was asked 1 year, and before that they were asking what did the government do to handle the challenges of processing industry. This is called as theme repetition. Keep in mind that the themes might get repeated. Is that okay? Understood? Okay, so this is how you should be able to observe. Okay, so land reforms, cropping pattern, public distribution system, food processing, agriculture, marketing. Some say, sir, land reforms is not. No, land reforms is a very important area, because if you see last 3-4 years, 2 times there were 2 questions. 2 years, one question was asked. Okay, so objectives and measures of land reforms, discuss how land ceiling policy on land holdings can be considered as an effective reform under economic criteria. Are you able to get this? The other day they've also asked this question, what are the reasons for success of land reforms in India? They've asked this question. Okay, 2019. If I ask you reasons for failure of land reforms, you can give me 5-6 points or 10 points. But if UPSC is asking what are the reasons for success of land reforms, then side headings become difficult. So first is, once the concept is clear, once our research is over, first I will play on the side headings. Then how to extend the side heading with a data point, example, or a scheme. Is that okay? Understood, right? Okay. So maybe at the end I will ask you what are the reasons for success. Okay, so that is the second cluster. Most important cluster is the second cluster. If you're not reading vision material, those vision students who are not reading all the 4 books, there are 4 material books for the foundation batch students. There is a second book which is on that. Second book of vision is about the second theme. Agriculture, PDS, food processing. So now, those who are writing mains now, they don't have time to read the material. Then you have value addition material. Read only the value addition material. No, sir, we don't have time to read the value addition material also. Then what has to be done? Read the previous questions and use ChatGPT to formulate your answers. Use ChatGPT to formulate your answer. Give the question to ChatGPT, get the point, see how toppers have written, see how ChatGPT is writing, copy paste the side headings. That is for those who are writing this year. Okay, so they feel that, sir, we don't have time, we have to read optional also, we have to do everything now. Okay, so we don't have time. What has to be done? So we'll keep a textbook plus ChatGPT, give the question, take the bullet points, copy paste. Side heading, recent data. Side heading, recent example. Side heading, scheme. That is how you will pick up. And ChatGPT is giving that also. You have to give proper instruction to ChatGPT saying that, you give me the schemes related to inclusive growth right now. Okay, so properly if you give instruction, you get that also. You can copy paste that also. Fine. So now the third important area, the importance of this is obviously after the agriculture part. Remember this. But students feel economics means finance, budgeting, government budget. Okay, so fiscal policy. That's good for prelims. But for mains, of course, this is important. So a solid 2 questions, 1 question or 2 questions can come. May or may not. But 2 questions generally, 1 question generally will come from this area. Okay, so I'll show you the questions also. So here this is about government budgeting, fiscal policy, and we are putting investment models also. That is the reason too. If I remove investment models like PPPs, public-private partnerships and other things, then you'll have only 1 question from here. So you should know how much importance should be given to budget, monetary policy, fiscal policy and budgeting for mains. And how much importance should be given to agriculture. Where should more importance should go to? Obviously, agriculture and related areas. This we'll read anyhow. For prelims you would have read. So for prelims is this question, from prelims also you can answer a few questions, straight questions. So they've asked, what is revenue budget and capital budget? Briefly explain what is revenue budget and capital budget. Straightforward question, 2020-21. Revenue budget has revenue receipts, revenue expenditure. Capital budget has capital receipts, capital expenditure. And you start explaining. Now that is a straightforward question. There also you will mention the latest budget FD data, revenue deficit data, to make your answer little different from others. You can't just write, oh, revenue budget is this. I think you're getting my point, right? So this is, okay, so the cluster is all about government's role in economy. It's about how the government earns, where it spends, and how it partners with private sector to build the nation. Okay, so we have to read, if I read survey, budget topic, that's more than sufficient. Or the first chapter in the economic survey. See in the first chapter? It has everything related to taxes, deficits. If I'm not reading the specific chapter also, I should be, if I'm reading the specific chapter on budget, fiscal policy, that's done. Once the basics are clear, you'll read that chapter and that should be more than sufficient for this topic. Okay, so, but see the way the questions have been evolving. Now once the question was like, what are the taxes that are subsumed into GST? I think that was around 2017. Different taxes subsumed into GST. What are the revenue implications of GST? First part is easy, second part is difficult. Second part is revenue implications. That means after launching GST, what is the impact? Are you able to get this? Okay, so that was asked. So enumerate the indirect taxes which have been subsumed in the GST in India. This was a direct factual question, testing knowledge of GST structure, but the question is, till here it is okay. There's another part to this question. Another part to this question is, what are the revenue implications of GST, which is a difficult part. Now, one more thing is, when there are two parts in the question, every part has to be addressed. You will not only write this and complete the answer and bring the second part in the conclusion. You should know that sufficient space has to be given for the second part as well. Is that okay? So this is how they used to ask. Then subsequently, the questioning pattern obviously has evolved. Explain the rationale behind GST, Compensation to States Act of 2017. How has COVID impacted the compensation fund and created new federal tensions? This question demands not just knowledge of the act, but an analysis of application in the contemporary context of pandemic and its impact on fiscal federalism. This is a pure current affair link-based question. It's a very difficult question, in fact, in the exam conditions. Are you able to get this? Okay, so evolving situation is what you have to observe. Earlier, they were just asked the factual question, and later they started. Okay, so now 2019, now 2021, again, this is what I was talking about, simple question that was asked. Components, very simple question. Okay, so this is, for prelims you have read, you can answer this question. I hope it is clear, right? See this was asked, I think, in 2019 or 18. Public expenditure management is a challenge to the government in the context of budget making during the post-liberalization period. One more theme is liberalization. Over-tertiarization of economy has led to jobless growth. That is also linked to LPG policy. Foreign investment, critical factor for growth, that is also linked to liberalization. Public expenditure management is a challenge to the government in the context of budget making after the liberalization period. How? That was the question. Are you able to get this? So it's not about explaining what it is, but rather you should think why government's expenditure or government spending has become a challenge after the LPG or in the context of budget making during the LPG or after LPG policy. Washington Consensus, adhering to the rules of IMF and World Bank, especially IMF. You have to keep FDs under control, RDs under control. At the same time, spend money on capital expenditure, that is infrastructure. At the same time, focus on inclusive growth. So government had limited resources. Focusing on both was a challenge. And that is basically what you're talking about, Then came FRBM Act. Heard of FRBM? So FRBM puts a direct condition with respect to keeping RDs and FDs under control, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. You cannot borrow from RBI also directly as per FRBM Act. Are you able to get this? So public spending has become a challenge because government cannot spend as it likes after the 1991 scenario. So I should know what are the things that happened after 1991. What did we exactly do? So this is a more interesting question. This is a 250 word question than this. Is that okay? Understood? Last theme. Last cluster. Cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3, cluster 4. Okay, so most important cluster, cluster 2 and cluster 1. So I will start my preparation from cluster 1 and 2. Then come to cluster 4. Then go to cluster 3. Are you able to get this? Okay, so that is the order. Okay, so now here if I see industry and infrastructure, 2 questions compulsory. You can download Rishikesh Reddy's notes also. Okay, so of course it's 6 years. I know him personally. So 6 years back, actually, 4, 5 years, been 4, 5 years. So infrastructure material is also available. Okay, so you can keep some toppers notes, or you can keep, you can download topper sheets. You can download Rishikesh Reddy notes, and you have the vision value addition material in your pocket, and then old question papers. Okay, so that should be the way out for those who want to do it in just 2 months. Got the point, right? Somebody who has to do it right away, just like that. We have not read anything, but somehow we have cleared the exam. There are some like they cleared it, but they have not read for mains. They didn't even expect that they will clear. Some students are there, like they thought that, baad mein dekhte hai. Okay, if I clear, but suddenly they have cleared. Now suddenly they have to read ethics also, optional also. They have to read GS 1, 2, 3. And then then the approach is completely different. You have to look for different cheat codes to do it fast. Okay, fine. So here you can see another area which is often neglected is industry. Nobody reads this. Okay, this industrial policy is not asked in isolation. When I say industrial policy, we are more focused on manufacturing related questions. Okay, MSME, significance of MSME, etc. Okay, and then energy, port, road, airport, and railways. This is again, nobody reads this. They feel that in exam, it will be managed. But if a question comes from here, you can't even attempt the question. At least other areas, you can bluff something. But here, you can't even bluff if there is a specific question on road or specific question on rail. Got the point, right? So there, some amount of effort is required. If you don't want to read the complete material, read topper's notes on infrastructure related areas. But you can't say that I'll not read and go to the exam. No, that's not the case, because it's 2 questions. Got the point, right? Okay, so here, effects of liberalization, industrial policy. Always, I'll show you the questions. So the cluster provides a physical and industrial framework for the economy, like flagship programs like Make in India, PLI, NIP, PM Gati Shakti. Okay, so of course you need not know everything in PM Gati Shakti for mains, unless and until there's a specific question. But otherwise I should be able to link it to the current. Suppose if government is specifically asking on PLI. Okay, so critically examine the success of production linked incentive scheme, and what additional measures have to be taken to boost India's manufacturing sector or the secondary sector. Suppose a question comes in that format, then I should know something about PLI. I can't write anything without knowing anything about PLI, except the full form. If you just know the full form, it's a little difficult. You know something about the production linked incentive. So this area, if it's not prepared, you can't write. I'll show you the question. See here. This was asked before last year. Faster economic growth requires increased share of manufacturing sector in GDP, particularly of MSME. Remember, MSME is a significant theme. Why? Even in the budget, government has increased the investment and turnover related requirements for MSME. That means it's an important, significant theme for next 2 years. So I should know, it's not about defining micro, small and medium enterprises. I should know why MSME is important, significance of MSME, problems of MSME, what measures have been taken by the government in the recent past to make MSMEs more efficient. This is what I have to read. It's not the definition of MSME. I think you're getting my point right. Suppose if I ask you, what are the problems in MSME? Or why is MSME so significant? Or if I ask you, what is the link between MSME and inclusive growth? Here the question is what? Linking MSMEs to economic growth. But if there is a question on linking MSMEs to inclusive growth, can you give me some bullet points, like side headings? Got the question? So if instead of linking MSMEs to growth, if there is a question on MSMEs being linked to inclusive growth, can you give me some side headings? One, employment generation. One side heading, employment generation. Is that okay? Okay, so MSMEs are labor intensive in nature. So it's with 20% investment, 80% jobs can be created using MSME. This is the data point. 20% investment, 80. What does that mean? It means MSMEs are labor intensive. Are you able to get this? External sector balance. MSMEs contribute to around 45% of exports, thereby enhancing the external sector balance or helps in handling our current account deficit. That's another side heading. Employment generation, external sector balance. Then tribal development, inclusive growth, tribal development. Why? Because in tribal areas, IAS officers also have come up with several micro, small and medium enterprises which are leading to tribal development. Another important aspect is around 60% of MSMEs have a rural base. So rural-urban divide, remember that? That's an element of inclusive growth. In the element of inclusive growth, we have written rural-urban divide, reducing the gap between rural-urban area. So that means what? Since 60% of MSMEs have a rural base, that means it helps in reducing rural-urban gap, or it will reduce migration of people from rural to urban areas. That means that's an element of inclusive growth in those elements. Tribal development, social security, regional development, rural-urban divide, financial inclusion, these were the elements. So I will remember the elements, and then the question is what? How do I link MSMEs to inclusive growth? Reducing poverty, tribal development, employment generation. Skill, okay. See, basically skill development is a challenge. Okay. So what else? 20% of MSMEs have women owners. Minimum of 20%. Okay, so that's talking about social justice. Are you able to get this? So don't stop at reading about economic growth. Think of inclusive growth also. Go a step further, because MSMEs and economic growth is already asked. What if there is a question on MSMEs and inclusive growth? I need to have some bullet points. Your thought process should be like that when I see a question. MSME and economic growth is easy, in fact. Why? Exports are there. Okay, major contribution to the manufacturing sector. Are you able to get this? Okay, so here MSMEs and growth is one aspect. MSME and inclusive growth is another aspect. Is that clear? Okay, so this is how the questions are. If you see another question here, industrial growth rate has lagged behind in the overall growth of GDP in the post-reform period. So liberalization and industry, this is the question. Give reasons how far the recent changes in industrial policy are capable of increasing the industrial growth. Okay, so these are questions in the fourth cluster. So if you see this is linking LPG and unemployment. This is linking LPG and unemployment. This is a question from your Indian Economic Development, NCERT. Okay, so this is basically how globalization has led to reduction of employment in the formal sector of Indian economy. That means how LPG has led to informalization of Indian economy. Is increased informalization detrimental to the development of the economy? This is the two parts of the question. I hope it is clear. So this is basically linking LPG and industry. Clear till there? Understood? So if this is clear, now this is a theme basically. So if I look at how questions have evolved and what can be asked, this is basically like once we have seen what is asked, okay, expected future angle. So once first stage is this only. Once this is done, probably from the current affairs, what could be asked? A little extension we have to do with respect to what could be asked. Okay, so we are not able to do that, then anyhow mock papers are anyhow there. Okay, so you'll be writing mock tests and you'll pull out points. For example, let's say, so inclusive growth was one theme. Okay, in that theme, 2018 to 20, this was the question. Explain intergenerational and this is intragenerational issues of equity from the perspective of inclusive growth. Okay, this was asked 18 to 20. 21 to 24, is inclusive growth possible under market economy? State the significance of financial inclusion in enhancing economic growth. This was asked. Key concepts to link: financial inclusion, social sector expenditure, human development, skill development, gig economy. These are the areas which are linked to this. Why 10 years is over with respect to Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana? So everybody expected that there will be a question, and therefore now probably UPSC should have asked last year, or maybe this year mains it should be coming. So that is about financial inclusion or 10 years of success. There were a lot of articles in Hindu also talking about 10 years of Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. Okay, and then social sector expenditure, already asked in the last year mains. This was the first question that was asked. Okay, so you can check that. Okay, then questions on gig economy. Okay, so everybody knows what is gig. So now expected future angle can be role of digital public infrastructure in fostering inclusive growth and bridging digital divide. Expectation only. Okay, so that already infrastructure and inclusive growth. How can infrastructure lead to inclusive growth? How will infrastructure lead to inclusive growth? Anybody? Will infrastructure lead to inclusive growth? How? Okay, so this is basically Madam's $5 trillion target. This was the picture in 2018 economic survey, when Madam was saying India wants to reach $5 trillion through investment-led growth. In that investment-led growth, we will focus on private investment as well as exports, two things. Okay, but private investor will not invest unless and until there is government investment which is going into infrastructure. And subsequently, government has come up with several programs like National Infrastructure Pipeline, Monetization Pipeline, Logistics Policy, and PM Gati Shakti. 4 themes: infrastructure pipeline, monetization pipeline, already question was asked on monetization, logistics policy, and PM Gati Shakti. Okay, all 4 together is a prerequisite for infrastructure development. And when infrastructure is going to improve, then probably we'll also reach that $5 trillion. Okay, so this is how infrastructure can be linked to growth also. And whenever we talk about infrastructure, simple logic, whenever we are building a road, 100 crore, companies will put in money because there is a road. This is called as crowding in private investment. Because of this crowding in private investment, employment generation will happen. If employment generation is going to happen, that will also create jobs. That is another aspect of inclusive growth. So incomes increase slowly, then poverty might reduce. Okay, so reduction of poverty is also an aspect of inclusive growth. And because there are industries developing, roads and people's incomes are increasing, There will be schools and hospitals that can come up. So that can lead to social infrastructure. Social infrastructure is development of schools and hospital. Since everything is developing, so for 100 crore rupees, there could be maybe 10,000 crores worth of increase with respect to my GDP. This is called as multiplier effect. So what is this? What are the benefits of infrastructure? Crowding in private investment. 2, employment generation. Increase in people's income, reduction of poverty. Then multiplier effect on GDP or national income. These are 5 points. And then comes your skill in terms of writing data. Are you able to get this? Okay, so this is just to give you a hint, like, yes, how do I use economic survey? We'll use economic survey as much as possible to make the answers better. Okay, so that is something which you have to keep in mind. So infrastructure, now the evolving theme being more specific to digital public infrastructure. Last year, there was a lot of discussion on digital public infrastructure. So this will reduce the digital divide. So today we are talking about energy poverty, digital poverty. Are you able to get this? During COVID, hardly 1/4 of the kids had access to mobile phones, etc. So education was difficult. So all this is what? Digital inequality, huge digital divide. Okay, so digital public infrastructure, that is how it is. Okay, so is that clear? Now, MSP and subsidies. Okay, so earlier there was a question, 18 to 20. How will MSP rescue the farmers from low income trap? Okay. Then another question angle was discuss the issues raised by WTO, raised in relation to agriculture. That means this is a question related to agreement on agriculture. Agreement on agriculture, problems in agreement on agriculture specific to WTO basically. So that means what are the issues raised in WTO in relation to agriculture? Okay. Then PDS questions, food security questions were already asked. Now the discussion is feasibility of legal guarantee for MSP in the light of India's fiscal constraints and WTO commitments. I'm not saying this will be asked. This is a theme basically. So right now farmers were asking for a legal backup, and then there are issues in WTO commitments also. So that is an evolving theme that can be asked. Okay. Similarly, if you see infrastructure, this was the question asked. Discuss the factors to be considered while designing a concession agreement between a public and private entity. Okay, this was the question which was already asked. So those who have checked the paper will know this was asked. Factors to be considered while designing a concession agreement. Concessions is one type of public-private partnerships, which is where the risk for the private player is also high, the returns for the private player is also high. Most of our BOT models are also under these concession agreements. So what are the things which they should consider while signing such concession agreements? Public and private players will consider. Why is PPP required in infrastructure projects? Examine the role of PPP in redevelopment of railway stations. Already asked. Specific question to railway stations. Unless and until we know something, we can't write anything here. The second part of the question. Okay, so then National Infrastructure Pipeline, PM Gati Shakti, asset monetization viability gap funding. Okay, assess the challenges and opportunities of National Monetization Pipeline in financing India's infrastructure deficit. Why? Because there was a focus in the budget related to asset monetization. Asset monetization was discussed in the budget, and therefore we are talking about asset monetization role in terms of handling infrastructure. So once the previous questions are clear, then only our thought will move to future year questions. First is previous year question. Future year questions, nobody can expect exact, but we can expect that it will be in and around this area. And once my data is there in and around that area, anything that can come, I can write. So that's how it is. Okay, so agriculture, marketing, unemployment. For example, unemployment, you can see how has globalization led to reduction of formal jobs. I showed you this question. Okay, that was the question. Most of the unemployment in India is structural in nature. Do you agree? Discuss. This was also asked. Structural unemployment. Okay, then now discuss the challenges posed by AI. And it can be AI or informalization of Indian economy. There's more of in formalization. Okay, so that could be a question that can be asked. Okay, so this is basically impact of industrialization 4, that is AI and robotics, on the employment or underemployment or replacement of jobs. Are you able to get this? Okay, so that is a theme which can be seen. Till here, what we have discussed is, first what we have discussed is what should be done, getting hold of key concepts. Second part, pillar was basically to link it to current affairs, what has to be done. Third is, how do we write good answers, what has to be done, what are the important areas, etc. In that important areas, we have come up with 4 clusters. Are you able to get this? 4 clusters. And the second cluster was agriculture. First cluster was growth and macroeconomic fundamentals. Third was budgeting, fiscal policy. And the fourth was industry, liberalization, and these areas. And then what we are trying to do is, if these are the PYQs, what could be asked related to these? First, all the PYQs have to be read. And you don't find a PYQ book in the market which is absolutely okay. Like the answers are absolutely in line with the question. You don't find that. Okay, so you don't find. Vision material, there are some questions which are written, not all. Okay, so, but though the answers are not in line, still you will read. Okay, and you will use ChatGPT to update the answers. Got the point, right? You will use ChatGPT to update the answers. You can't say that answers are not there, so no. Okay, so that is one. Okay. Till here, is that okay? Understood? Any doubts till here? You have any specific doubts before we take up some questions on live deconstruction of some PYQ? We'll see what kind of answers are better. How do we write it? Before doing that, any doubts? No doubts. Everything is okay. You have read this material, you have read something, you feel that something else has to be done. These kind of doubts also you can ask. Okay. Infrastructure, agriculture, growth, inclusive growth. Yes. See, agriculture is a theme. How many questions will come from agriculture? Let's say 2. Suppose this year there are going to be 8 or 9 questions. No? Take, let's say, 2 from agriculture. It can be issues in the agriculture, in news, or it can be straight picked up from the main syllabus. For example, the scope and significance of. Sometimes always something there in news, there can be a question. Suppose there's nothing in news also, there can be a question. For example, there's PDS problems, challenges they've asked. That's an ongoing issue since many years, right? So PDS challenges. But they've picked up questions straight from the lines in the syllabus. It's a valid answer. Okay. No. So they basically, for GS3 economics also, there's a clear-cut idea. It's not that there's no idea. That is what we are trying to do now. And we don't say GS2 is easy. Okay, so don't say GS2 is easy. That's become more analytical nowadays. Okay, there also is a lot of effort. Okay, and here actually one is, where are the questions coming from? First thing that has to be done. And here actually questions are coming from, let's say, only 4 or 5 areas primarily. It's not like that in other papers probably, but you have to be able to identify which are those areas. It is easy here to identify which areas the questions are coming. And then you start your preparation. So it's not random reading, I've read Ramesh Singh, I've read this book, that book. That will not help you. Okay, now, huh. Ethical example. So ethical, see one thing. First, I'll write economic points. Then I'll write social points. Suppose poverty is a topic. Poverty can be a topic in GS1 also. Poverty can be a topic here also. Now, how do I differentiate my answer? When poverty is asked here, I'll be more focused on the economic aspect of poverty first. And then, after I finish my economic points, then I'll come to the social aspect. Are you able to get this? So you may say, sir, I have a lot of, so we'll talk about feminization of agriculture. Okay, so all this is where? In the Indian society. Okay, and feminization of agriculture, will it lead to poverty? Are you able to get this? When I say inclusive growth also, for example, after LPG, okay, so female feticide increased because of ultrasound machines. Technology started moving in, but patriarchal mindset did not change, and it was easier to kill the girl child. Are you able to get this? So the negatives of LPG policy, this is from the social perspective. But that will not be my important focus. I'll first focus on the economic aspect itself, and then only think of one or two social aspects. Okay, so there's nothing like ethical example. I'll not write an ethical example, I'll write a data point, I'll write a scheme that comes first. So ethical example is more an ethics paper. And suppose in a 10 marker, I can't take a case study and write also. That's also not possible. Very clear. First write the economic points, then come up with one or two social points if you don't have the economic points, and then write a conclusion. That's the best way. There's no ethical example here. Market economy does not talk about ethics. Simple. Economics, market economy, does it have emotion? No, no. Earthquake, only one rice dealer is left. 1 kg rice is 1500, he will say. If you ask him why, he says demand and supply. Now this is what is market economy. Now when I look at the ethical angle to it, then that's different. So that will not be, you don't have scope also. Ethical example means you have not read well, and you're not getting economic points, and therefore you're thinking of, okay, got it? Yes. Obviously. No, all the flow charts, actually last year I've given a data sheet and a flow chart to one mains batch student. Flow charts are not drawn in the exam. Flow charts are already prepared. For example, I'll tell you, if there is a GDP, savings and GDP, it's a line graph. It's already fixed. That means any question related to savings, investment, GDP, I will draw a line graph. I already practiced the line graph. Line graph, only two factors I'll take. I'll draw a line graph. Unemployment related questions, sector related questions, I will draw bar diagrams. I will draw bar charts. Heard of bar charts? Okay, so bar charts. If there is a question related to sectors of economy, contribution of, so this is basically over tertiarization and neglect of secondary sector, let's say. So secondary sector has been neglected. 1990s, 30.9 was the contribution of agriculture, 22.3 was the secondary sector, 45.8 was the contribution of services sector. In the 2000s, if I observe, agriculture contribution to GDP has come down. Industry, almost same, not changed. Services sector was around 53.7. So what has happened is, whatever reduction that has happened in my primary sector, it was compensated by the services sector, but there was muted industry. Manufacturing contribution to GDP, specifically in the secondary sector, manufacturing is only 17% even now. 17%. This is also called as muted manufacturing. That means manufacturing contribution to GDP after 1990s remains standstill. So my growth process has moved or has crossed over the secondary sector, or every economy generally grows from primary to secondary and then from secondary to tertiary. Unlike India, where there was a jump straight from primary to tertiary, neglecting the secondary sector. How do I, this is an English line of 3-4 lines, right? So the same thing I can show it in a graph that there was a jump from primary to tertiary. So anything related to sectors, unemployment related data. Unemployment how? Contribution of different sectors to GDP, 1 bar graph. Contribution of different sectors to employment. Service sector contributes to what percentage of GDP? Service sector contributes to what percentage of employment? This shows, this is basically talking about jobless growth or lack of occupational transition. So such questions, I have a prefixed mindset. Any unemployment sector-based questions, I've already practiced bar graphs. Any growth-based questions, I'll draw linear graphs. Where I have to show multiple points like food processing, I'll draw box diagrams. Significance, box. Okay. Then in ethics, you draw other things also, no? But here in economics, basically multi-model approach. That means one box, I'll show multiple dimension, multi-dimension, single dimension. All the flowcharts, all the graphs, like the data sheet, have to be prepared beforehand. In the exam, we are not going to experiment anything. There is no scope of experimenting. We will not take any risk. We are not drawing any chart for the first time. Everything is already practiced. Growth related question, this is what I'm going to draw. I'm not going to cross that line. I'll only draw that because I've drawn that in the mock papers also. Are you able to get this? So all the block diagrams, all the line charts, all the pie charts, everything has to be prepared beforehand. I think you got my point right. It's not data sheet. Now somebody says, so I have a very good memory. No, nothing like that. There should be a data sheet related to the 4 clusters. The 4 clusters: land reforms, sectors of economy, contributions to GDP, labor force, unemployment rate, FDI into food processing. Everything should be written on the paper beforehand. I am going to look into that paper again and again, and then only data will flow in the exam. Schemes, everything written at one place. All manufacturing schemes at one place. All food processing schemes at one place. Agri-marketing schemes at one place. Are you able to get this? When you look into it again and again, when a question comes, you know automatically it flows. It flows from here. Only then we'll be able to complete the paper and get that good score. Everything is prepared. Data sheet is prepared related to the 4 clusters. Schemes are prepared. Bar charts, line diagrams, everything is pie chart, everything is prepared. When I write mock tests, I will experiment everything. And check how the scores are coming. Of course, scores are the last thing we'll check, but definitely I'll be experimenting in the mock tests. And then I'll see how is the examiner able to see. When I'm drawing in this manner, is he giving me an extra mark? When I'm complicating the diagram, is he reducing a half mark? That's like meticulous preparation. You can't say, okay, UPSC will give, okay, so or it will not give. That kind of attitude. No, that should not be the case, because nowadays getting a chance to write mains has become very difficult. And those who have got the chance should be able to use it to their maximum benefit. Because the prelims papers, I think you know how the papers are. It's not like 2017, 18, 19, where every time you clear prelims. It's like those who are in service also, they are also not clearing prelims nowadays. So therefore, given an opportunity, like, you have to be very careful in every angle possible. Got the point right? Okay, so is that clear? Okay, so there's nothing like you'll prepare directly draw in the exam hall. No, I've made a 2-page notes on flowcharts, and I'll only draw those flowcharts. And see to that, if I'm drawing 7 flowcharts in my 18 questions, all the 7 flowcharts are different. If I'm drawing flowcharts for 4 of economy questions, so generally the 4 should be little different, so that the examiner also will have some interest in evaluation. That's it. Is that clear? Okay. So now, just for some examples here. Investment in infrastructure is essential for more rapid and inclusive economic growth, discussed in the light of India's experience. This was the question already asked, 250 words. We're not discussing the answer, but what we'll try to see is, okay, so we'll just try to differentiate. So you may say, sir, how do you know this is a 90 or this is a 110 plus? So nobody exactly knows, but This is basically seeing and evaluating different sheets. You get an idea as to where the marks are at a higher rate, obviously. Here, this is a generic answer. Yes, infrastructure is important. It will give examples like road, port, help in economic growth, and it will lead to job creation. Very generic answer. Everything is English. It's not wrong. It's okay. Okay. But suppose if I define, we'll define infrastructure and its multiplier effect on GDP. I'll start my introduction with the impact of infrastructure and multiplier effect. One was multiplier effect. I showed you the chart. Multiplier effect on GDP. For every 1 rupee spent on infrastructure can lead to 2.5 rupees, increase in 2.5 rupees of my GDP or Indian economy, in the Indian economy. Economic survey. Are you able to get this? So this is very specific to survey-based introduction or a data-based introduction. It will catch hold of the examiner's eye. It will catch hold of the examiner's eye. He has read the survey, is updated with what is happening. Rather than defining what is infrastructure, everybody knows what is infrastructure. There's no point in defining what is infrastructure. Because he's not asking what is infrastructure. Investment in infrastructure is essential for more rapid and inclusive growth. That means this is a link between infrastructure and inclusive growth. Okay, so then how it ensures rapid growth? Okay, so discuss the role of infrastructure pipeline, PM Gati Shakti, logistics policy. For example, if you know what is the target of national logistics policy? To reduce our logistic cost to 8% of GDP by 2030. This is the target of our logistics policy, national logistics policy. It is around 14 to 15% now. US right now is 7% only. 7% of GDP is its logistic cost. If your logistic cost is high, though you produce the best product, while your transportation cost is high, packaging cost is high, you have to run around for warehouses, cold storage facilities. All this will increase the logistic cost. It will have a negative impact on GDP. This is what logistics policy can do. Are you able to get this? This is what a weak logistics efficiency can do. So that is the reason we focused on logistics policy. So the 4 themes used by the government, NIP, NMP, logistics policy, you're not going to define anything, you're going to mention them. Okay, so how is it going to reduce the cost? That is data again. Are you able to get this? Now this requires effort, but when I know these are the areas, then I can put in intense effort and go deep into these areas, collecting data. You say, how will I remember data? You will only remember data with respect to 7, 8 areas, and that can be done. Are you able to get this? Okay. How it ensures inclusive growth? This is another aspect. How infrastructure will lead to inclusive growth. Now you have to recollect the diagram, elements of inclusive growth. Then what we have linked to inclusive growth. Okay, schemes related to inclusive growth. So infrastructure link, PM Gram Sadak Yojana. Okay, or Jal Jeevan Mission. Digital India, promoting financial inclusion via JAM, Jandan Aadhar mobile. Okay, this shows an understanding of social dimensions of infrastructure. That is something linked to inclusive growth. But I'm writing it through examples of schemes. I'm not just mentioning, okay, it will lead to women empowerment. It will increase the incomes of people. Are you able to get this? Okay, rural infrastructure development. Okay, so instead of writing that, this is a specific way. For a generic answer, when we write a specific answer, you will definitely get more marks. Remember this. And this requires effort. This requires you making your notes using online ChatGPT or whatever it is. It requires your effort. This is where you have to keep the effort. Once that reading is done, the real effort comes here. Are you able to get this? Otherwise, you write a generic answer, then automatically the score will come down. When we write a specific answer, India's experience, challenges, we'll also briefly touch upon the challenges like financial gaps, issues when I'm like mentioning them, land acquisition, delays in PPP and other things. And is there a forward-looking optimistic conclusion which I can write? In the exam condition, always it is not possible. But in the mock test, we will practice for few things we can write. So government is looking at InvITs, Infrastructure Investment Trust, REITs, Real Estate Investment Trusts, a new ways of infrastructure financing. Are you able to get this? So forward looking, Okay, so where we want to reach a $5 trillion, or today, of course, we're talking about by 2047, we want to become how many $1 trillion economy? Viksit Bharat. No idea. This is important, huh? So these things are important. Right? India wants to become Viksit Bharat by 2047, 2047. Or India is a lower middle income country. We have to move to upper middle income and then to a high income country. Of course, we are in a middle income trap now. So those income datas, or when will we become a $30 trillion economy? Is India going to become a $30 trillion economy by 2047? What has to be done? Are able to get this? So very clear conclusion. So I'll bring Viksit Bharat in conclusion. I can bring INVITs in conclusion. Okay, so that should be very clear. So then the marks will flow. That will happen when your preparation is in this line. Your preparation is not in that line. You're not writing schemes. You're not preparing only. You're just reading 1, 2, 3, 4. Some random textbook who has written some answers for the old questions. That's not sufficient. You have to update that old question paper booklet with the latest schemes and relevance with respect to current affair. Then check when you write exams, you'll understand that you'll get scores. Is that okay? So this is just to give you a simple understanding, a blueprint like a kind of a thing.
CSAT is qualifying but absolutely crucial. No matter how well you perform in GS, if you don't clear CSAT, your prelims ends there. Every year, many capable aspirants fall short simply because they underestimated this paper. What's the way forward? Structured preparation, consistent practice, and the right guidance. Join the Vision IAS CSAT Classroom Program 2026 starting from 12th June at 11 a.m. What you'll get: complete coverage of quantitative aptitude, logical reasoning, and comprehension. Emphasis on speed, accuracy, and concept clarity. Regular practice with UPSC level questions. Personalized guidance and mentorship. Available in both offline, classroom, and live online modes. Whether you're a first-time aspirant or reappearing, don't let CSAT be the reason you fall short. UPSC Mains is not just about writing answers, it's about writing them the right way. With clarity, structure, and a strategic approach. Lakshya Mains Mentoring Program 2025 by Vision IAS is designed to help you internalize the mains mindset through a mentor-driven, performance-focused approach. At the core of Lakshya is personalized mentorship. Regular one-on-one sessions to assess your progress. Detailed feedback to refine your answer writing. Strategic guidance tailored to your strengths and weaknesses. Backed by daily answer writing practice. Enrichment sessions on GS, essay, and ethics. Issue-based discussions to build analytical depth. Rigorous tests with structured evaluations. Lakshya isn't about information overload, it's about consistent improvement under expert guidance. It's about converting preparation into performance. Enroll for the course starting 24th June. Available in online hybrid mode.
Okay. Now, if there is a 15 marker, then I have a scope to draw such diagrams. For a 10 marker, a small bar graph, not required actually for a 10 marker. 10 marker schemes and side headings, that's more than sufficient. So in a 15 marker, I will have a little higher scope in terms of depicting something like, okay. Is that okay? So for a 10 marker, don't go with this mindset that I have to draw a chart, not required. That will again reduce your marks. Somehow you want to push a chart at the cost of writing points. Don't do that. Space is limited, no? Got the point? Okay. Now one more way of preparing for such questions. For example, these questions are there, like GDP related questions. Prepare templates. Prepare templates. What I mean by template? when these related questions are coming, I will write points from these areas. That's called as a template. Okay, for GDP related questions or inclusive growth related questions, okay, or employment related questions, templates can be prepared. And once my template is there, things become more simple. Okay, so for example, for GDP, we can prepare a template. A template. Template is what? So this is basically brainstorm potential GDP template. What if I don't know in the exam hall? It's not that everything I will know. This is what I was talking about. Many a times, let's say you prepared well, but there are 2 questions you don't know. I know some students who have left this question potential GDP because they don't know what is this word potential GDP. In fact, you would have written factors affecting GDP also, would have got some score. Are you able to get this? So what is this template? Template is like, for example, how will I prepare a template? Template can be prepared from factors of production. What are the factors of production that will affect GDP? Land, labor, capital, entrepreneur. This is one way of looking at it. Another can be points in the syllabus. Then what are the current factors that is affecting my growth? Simple understanding. For example, here if you see land related factors, what are the things? Land regulation, corruption. Points can be regulatory cholesterol, linkages, bureaucratic inefficiency, etc. For example, if I talk about labor, what are the factors that can affect? So there was a topic chapter in economic survey which was talking about liberalizing labor related laws. Very deep liberalization the economic survey was talking about, MSMEs also, and how do we liberalize labor laws. It was talking about cases with Vietnam and other countries. How is India lacking that liberal thing? So here labor productivity is one. How do you do it? Like the skills like Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Then liberalizing labor laws as stated in the economic survey. When it comes to capital, so capital, basically when we talk about capital, what are the factors that can affect the capital? Okay, so one is public investment. So then I should know what is the effective capital expenditure ratio. Okay, so effective capital expenditure, how much government is spending on capital expenditure, etc. Or maybe credit to deposit ratios also are important. Last 1 or 2 years, the credit to deposit ratios were high. Deposits were not going into banks because of mutual funds. So deposits were not there, and whatever deposits were going, it was channelized in the form of credit. So that was also one of the factor why CRR has been reduced by 100 basis points from 4% to 3%. So you should be knowing that. Then problems in entrepreneurship, etc. Then global factors. Right now, uncertainties, war. Then local factors are there. Local factors, infrastructure policies, road, port connectivities, logistics, etc. Then sudden shocks can be like COVID, or currently the war which is happening right now. So these are sudden shocks. So this is called as a template-based approach. For some areas, you are going to prepare templates, 3 or 4 templates. Inclusive growth, template. GDP, template. Employment-related areas, template. Infrastructure factors, template. So 4 or 5 templates will be there, and every year question will come. Therefore, I should be very careful in those templates. I'll have 7 or 8 points in my pocket. That is called as a template approach for preparation. I hope it is clear. Understood? Yes. This is basically what are the things that can affect the potential GDP. Of course, this is what are the things that can affect inhibiting factors. Savings to GDP ratio. I should know savings to GDP ratio is how much. Invest. Why should I know that? How do I know that data is important? Because already savings related question has been asked in the exam. So therefore, right now I will also know what is the savings to GDP ratio. Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? I should be knowing that. I can't just write. So regulatory issues, capital output ratios. Okay. So like this. This is basically a template to tell you. Clear? Okay, now what exactly you will do? So one is minimum reading, maximum output. This is, I call it as ROI, return on investment. When you do investments also, with little effort, my return should be more. It should not be the other way around, where I slog, but my marks are not coming. So for that, you need to be very clear exactly what has to be done. Okay, economic survey at least last 1 year, if not 2. But economic survey last 1 year. There also what you have to do, first chapter, agriculture, wherever we have seen those 4 clusters, those 4 clusters related topics have to be read in economic survey. Are you able to get this? This document will be uploaded, so you will not worry. Is that clear? Okay. And then budget, focus on the theme, new schemes, fiscal numbers, and other things. Vision document is also there, budget document. You not read the whole document, but you can read the vision document. Niti Aayog report, I think you should be knowing this, strategy of new India at the rate 75. There are some flow charts there. Agriculture related areas, very good, very interesting. You can write, I'll show you toppers, for example, if you see, for example, this, in the era of climate change and growing water scarcity, how can micro irrigation contribute to sustainable agricultural practices? According to Niti Aayog composite water management report, 600 million people in India live in highly water stressed region. Very basic, but very straightforward and very effective. This is called as a data-based introduction. Without preparation, we can't write such introductions. Are you able to get this? Okay, so that's a very basic use of Niti Aayog reports enhances the value of the answer. Now the question comes up, sir, we don't have time. Then pull out data points from topper sheets and cross-check it with internet. Because toppers are also like, they can make mistakes. So pull out all the data sheets, topper sheets, and from there, those who are writing this year. So they feel that we don't have time to read any report. So use topper sheet for ethics examples or these kind of data. Is that okay? But better if you read, no time, then what can we do? So in the end, let us look at some of the topper snippets. Now, this is basically topper snippet. I've not put the topper, everything what topper has done, but this is just to show you that we will be using the Niti Aayog report also for writing some introductions, especially the data-based introduction. Is that clear? Okay. Then foundation should be good. Foundation is good means, if I don't know what is capital output ratio, you may think, no, so no, that's required. If my foundation words are clear, at least I should know all the words at the back of my macroeconomic textbook. There are some words at the end of the macroeconomics textbook. I should know at least what is capital output ratio, what is inclusive growth, okay, what are structural reforms. I will get this. Okay, industrial policy reforms 1991, what it is, what did they do, what is about the crux of LPG, what is current account deficit, what is CPI basket. Got the point, right? So you can't say this is non-negotiable. I should know some concept. Without that, what will happen is your answers will look English. This is the problem. If you may say, sir, without I will write. But no, some conceptual clarity is there. It will get reflected in the answer. Okay, so that is something. How do I do that? One is NCRTs, okay, and current affairs. PT is there. If you are making your own notes, nothing like that. You don't have time. Vision compilation, that also you don't have time, PT is there. Okay, so every month current affairs you don't want to read, then PT is also there, that is one. So at the end, ABCD, note making here, one is for every syllabus topic. Now, every line in the syllabus, now this is very, very important. Every line in the syllabus, I need 5 to 10 points. For example, you will find scope, significance of food processing. That's how it goes. Mobilization of resources, economic planning, mobilization of resources. Mobilization of resources, how does government mobilize? How does private player mobilize resources? What are the challenges in mobilizing resources? So I need, for every line in the syllabus, I need something like 5 to 7 points clearly prepared. Okay, so those who have time, now my mains notes basically should be in this manner based on the lines in the syllabus of my mains. Main syllabus is clearly defined by UPSC. Prelim syllabus is not defined. Go and check. Main syllabus is clearly defined. The UPSC is telling I will ask from here. Okay, so please read. I'll be asking from here. Prelims it's not like that. It's vague. But for mains it's not like that. Clearly defined and questions will come from there. Then the notes which you have made should be supplemented with economic survey and budget and Niti Aayog report. You don't have the time to read the original reports, read vision material or your favorite material, whichever you like. Synopsis. Okay, but always I suggest economic survey to read, if you have time, so important topics, read straight economic survey. But you don't have time, then is that okay? Then see committees and current affairs. Here I talk about like schemes in news, data, schemes. Okay, Shanta Kumar committee, doubling Ashok Dalwai committee, enriching your notes, whatever you have written. Okay, and then comes data sheet. One data sheet means you'll not make 4 or 5 pages. And always my notes should be crisp. It should not be more than 100 pages, 120 pages. So I can revise it 10 times before going to exam. You don't make again a 500-page notes. Already you have a classroom notes if you have taken coaching. Or you have purchased some toppers notes or whatever it is. You already have one notes or bulky notes. No? But this note should be crisp. And you are preparing it online, it is far better because you can pick up points from everywhere possible. You'll keep topper sheets on one side, you'll keep chat GPT on the other side, government websites on one side while making your notes. And therefore your notes will be more dynamic and more better online. Okay, so no sir, I don't want to use computer, then make that notes on white page. But computer is better, time will be saved. Writing practice will do it separately. Don't think writing practice will happen like this only. That is a wrong notion. Keep on writing and seeing and writing. That's not writing practice. Separately we'll write mock tests. No? So that time writing practice will happen. So this is ABCD that has to be done. Is that clear? Okay, then this is basically how do I use the reports of Niti Aayog. This I mentioned. Okay, and then basic flow charts. The opposite is not like that. It's all about time. So all my bar charts, line charts, Venn diagrams, everything is already prepared beforehand. So this is basically how are agri-tech startups in India helping farmers in enhancing farm productivity and market access. Agriculture and technology, a mix. Farmers' income, productivity, soil health, post-harvest losses, mechanization, fintech. Okay, real-time information, weather, market linkages, soil health. So once some preparation is over, keep the topper sheets, look into the sheets, how are they writing? How are they putting the side heading? How are they mentioning the example? How is the data point flowing? How many points are they writing? Are you able to get this? So that is where again you'll get a hold. Okay, these toppers are, okay, you'll check some 5-6 toppers whom you like, whom you feel that they are okay for you, like they are in line with your logic, and then check their papers. Is that clear? I hope it is clear, understood. Any doubts you have? You have any doubts? And then I call it as icing on the cake. Icing on the cake is value addition. Last would be that. How will I get that half mark extra? How will my flow charts be? How will I underline? How will I write my conclusion a little different from others? And it's called as value addition. So once my content is ready, once my current affair linkage is ready, then comes my flow charts and value addition. That's the last thing. So which will give me that additional edge of 5-6 marks better than the competitor. Competitor is getting 85, I'll get 95 or 92. So that's 6-7 marks, half mark more for each question. For that, some value addition has to be done. So that is the last thing. And how do you do value addition? Value addition is done through schemes, flow charts. Okay, so observing topper sheets and having a prefixed flow chart. For economics, Venn diagram, bar chart, line graph, box diagram. More than sufficient. 4. Box, line, Venn diagram, bar charts. You will not have much scope to write also. That's it. For ethics, at least you will write seesaw and all that, ethics, imbalance and all. But here you don't have all that. Okay, so 4 is more than sufficient, 4 to 5. Okay. Very important. This is very important. Why? Because when the destination is clearly visible, everybody will study. But when I don't know where I'll land up, and there will be a lot of self-doubts, and that is the time you should be working, and that is what I mean by trust the process. So trust the process means trust the process with confidence, only the process, and don't think too much what will happen and things like that. And this is something like self-doubt. What am I doing? When I know this is GS3, I'm doing this and I'm practicing answers, it's more than sufficient. There's no way you'll get less marks. Okay, so you have to trust the process, keep practicing. Okay, and discipline is the key. Okay, so process means you will not just start Ramesh Singh or maybe some textbook randomly. Remember this. You start with the previous paper, concepts, and this is how you have to do it. Okay, so then, now right now you may say, oh, it's very difficult, I think whether I'll get 80, 90. We are not concerned about that. You have to trust the process and keep doing and accumulating things day by day. And within 2 months, you will be in form once we start. Got it? Any doubts? Few things are there where you can talk about, yes. You download and see. Facts are okay. There are some flowcharts also. No. Basically, what you will do, agriculture, growth, inclusive growth. These are the areas you will touch. You will not read everything. Mainly flowcharts. And see some data points if they are relevant. If the data is updated, updated. Data is also related to the 4 cluster. Keep the 4 clusters in mind, keep the syllabus in mind, and everything else should be based on these 4 clusters. And in that 4 clusters also, theme 1, 2 are more important. You'll start with 2 and 1. Got the point, right? And then only you will go to 3 and 1, 2, 4, 3. This is the order. Is that okay? Yes? Any other doubts? I don't suggest Yojana. Why? Because I believe that there's too much of effort and energy. Okay, so if you read Yojana, you should make a synopsis out of it, which I will be able to revise multiple number of times. My sincere suggestion would be, why can't I use internet straight? Okay, and put that time into optional. Okay, so that's my idea. But of course, no sir, I'm a very fast reader, voracious reader, I want to read Yojana. But pick up the snippets from Yojana. Okay, suppose unemployment, there is some article in the notes. So that also is revised. Otherwise, in the exam hall, you will not be able to recollect. If you're reading, you're spending time on it, you should be able to use it. That you have to keep in mind. Otherwise, random reading will not work. Kurukshetra, Yojana. Without that also we can get 100. Okay, but if you are reading, make a synopsis and revise. That is the suggestion. This will be uploaded, don't worry, on YouTube, na? Anything else like? No doubts? Everything is okay? Wonderful session, but you have to use the session. So you're making notes and all that. So no other doubts, like you have read something, there is some mix-up or something like that. You don't have that kind of doubts? Sir, some will say, sir, we have not started only. This year prelims economics was little okay than last year. So last year key errors were there. Next year also it will be the same. They will not ask too difficult questions. Why? Because UPSC, when it is asking difficult questions in prelims, it is not able to give the right key. Therefore, the questions will be simple. But conceptual clarity should be there. That's all. Don't worry about. Concept should be clear. See, prelims, it's like 16 questions are coming, 14, 13. That's it. Okay, so fine. Is that okay? That's all then. Thank you.